So the Americans are more interested in a transgender, homosexual agenda around the world. They will invest their money and give you money to protect human rights. Russia and China are coming with weapons and militarization strategies so that we can protect ourselves. So I want to say this very loud and clear to the Americans. Continue on your transgender agenda. Stay there. Leave us to do politics on the other side. Because what we need right now is not a minority human rights activation. What we need is a societal transformation. And for you as Americans to think that we really envy that when you have an anti-lesbian, anti-gay, LGBT principle, then tourists would drop. Let me correct that once and for all, Sbu. And cut and clip this, and it must be loud and clear. Are you saying to me that all the tourists are gay? And when you hear that this is a non-gay zone, tourism will suffer.
So, you guys all know that there has been this constant fear that the US might be in decline. And many countries from all over the world are now saying that they do not favor or they do not like the way the US was going about doing things. That America always preach something but does the opposite. And if there's one person I have followed for many years now, is Farid Zakari. He is a reporter or an anchor for the CNN. So let's watch this video together. And after that, I shall give you my take on what he said. So there is this next video I want us to watch together. And I will appreciate it if you leave us your thoughts and opinion in the comment section below. So let's watch.
America right now comes to Tanzania, comes to Ghana, comes to Zambia with 16 million. And guess what? 16 million only for Zambia. The 16 million, ask me, what is it for?
What is it for?
For human rights. Across the river, China and Russia coming to South Africa, ask me for what?
For what?
For a military training and skills sharing of security. So the Americans are more interested in a transgender, homosexual agenda around the world. They will invest their money and give you money to protect human rights. Russia and China are coming with weapons and militarization strategies so that we can protect ourselves. So I want to say this very loud and clear to the Americans. Continue on your transgender agenda. Stay there. Leave us to do politics on the other side. Because what we need right now is not a minority human rights activation. What we need is a societal transformation. And for you as Americans to think that we really envy that when you have an anti-lesbian, anti-gay, LGBT principle, then tourists would drop. Let me correct that once and for all, Sbu. And cut and clip this, and it must be loud and clear. Are you saying to me that all the tourists are gay? And when you hear that this is a non-gay zone, tourism will suffer? Question number one. Question number two. Are you saying that we don't have a right to expressing ourselves as Africans? Question number three. If democracy means majority rules and majority votes against a principle, then why won't you allow that to become law? Are you saying the minority must manage the majority or the majority must manage the minority? Then if that whole ideology is wrong, then take democracy in a nice black dustbin bag and throw it outside.
Now, I have said it many times on this show that I'm not in favor of people or the West as a whole getting themselves involved in African policies or politics. I think it's left for us, the Africans, to do what we think is best for us. If there is a problem, we should fight it by ourselves, or we should resolve it by ourselves. There is no need for the West stepping in Now, what he mentioned about the West coming in and giving money for this and that and this, right? I have said it again that people should not be easily convinced that China and Russia might necessarily be a force for good. Now, the thing with us Africans is that we have very short memory of things, and we hate doing things by ourselves, so we rather just love it if others do it for us. Russia and China in Africa might not necessarily be a good thing, and I have emphasized this point like a lot on this platform. China doing business in Africa is great. Russia coming in Africa to help with security is great, but we must be careful. We must not allow them have a foothold in Africa, and we must not always believe what they say. China might say, we have no reason or we have no intention of ever staying in Africa or ever recolonizing Africa. Well, they are just saying that now. We do not know what will happen in the next 30, 40, 50 years from now. China is giving us millions upon millions upon millions of credit or loans. Let's hope that China does not come someday or sometime in the future, like 100 years from now, and said, we want this area of your country if you are unable to pay back this loan. Let's hope so. I'm not saying they've done that. I'm not saying they have plans of doing that. I'm just saying that it's a possibility. It could always happen. They might just come back to one country, let's say like in Zambia, and said, we need this piece of land to set up a base, a military base, like what they did in Djibouti. Why people always think that China does not want to expand? Why people always think that? That's what I have never understood with us, the Africans. We saw the Chinese build a road and a bridge and some buildings, and we think, oh my God, they are good people. They are so kind. They are harmless. Oh my God, they love us. They are coming to help us. No, they are not coming to help you. They are coming to do business with you. Everything they do have a behind motive. The motive might not be as sinister as the West. That's not it. The motive might be less worse than America's. But do not forget, there is always a motive. There is always a motive. Nothing is done for free. There is no free lunch. I have made mention of this like 100 times. There is no free lunch. Let's continue.
Because what you are telling us is by the people, for the people, with the people, and all those slogans you hear, what democracy represents. If we are 10 in the room and 9 people say no, and one person says yes, democracy says you go with the majority. So if we say we want to make Africa democratic, and the demographics of our democracy says no, then why do you philosophically want to manipulate the will of the majority to favor the will of the minority? Then this is where it really gets confusing to me. Because you're selling me one thing on one. I understand this democracy because it is based on the principle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When it comes to practice, no, you can't practice it like that. Then what do you want? Do you want democracy? You want anarchy? You want indigenous governing systems? You want meritocracy? Maybe let's find another way of governing ourselves. But the ideology of democracy being founded on majority rule does not count. Because the rule that runs the South African constitution right now is not majority count, but minority count. I'm sorry to make it philosophical.
I'll throw in Uganda in the equation. It's waiting to be signed is it in Parliament or the President?
Yeah.
I think it's waiting for the President.
Same with Ghana also.
Is it with Ghana also? I saw Kamala Harris say with the President.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just throwing it into the equation since the line of your conversation is there.
The Uganda conversation, I like what Museveni presented, which also Ruto presented. Same word for word, what Emerson Mnangagwa presented, and ultimately what Museveni is also saying, that we have bigger issues to be worried about as Africans. Right now, we're looking at, I like what you're doing, unemployment, housing issues, and etc. For us to begin to, these for me it's like arguing who gets the cherry on the cake.
I think the speaker here is conflicting a lot of issues. I get what he is saying, and I totally understand what he's saying, but I think he is trying to say a particular narrative, and by so doing, he is conflicting both or three different things together. America involvement in African politics is different. African practicing the so-called democracy and one person, one vote is another thing altogether. And the so-called LGBTQ plus rights and stuff like that is another point together. So let's talk about democracy being a process where the majority has to rule. That's for sure. That's for sure. Democracy means the majority gets to rule and the people's voice get to be represented. That's for sure. But democracy also means that people have the right to association. People have the right to live freely. People have the right not to be targeted by their government. That is all in democracy. Like, there are so many things in democracy, not just you voting laws or making bills and passing them into laws. That's not just it. Democracy will never say you going out there and targeting a minority. Democracy will never say that. If there's one thing that is enshrined in a democratic society, is the rule of law or is the respect of minority groups. So you going out there making a very draconian anti-LGBTQ bill and passing it to law or signing it into law just so you can target a minority of your population. It's not democracy. That is anti-democratic. Maybe you don't know that. And then talking about Russia helping you with weapons to protect yourself. From who? From who? From who? From your neighbors? From your friends? From who? Why do Africa need that amount of weapons? Or why do Africa need weapons as a whole? Is Africa fighting any war abroad? Or is Africa fighting with their neighbors? Well, there are some few countries, but I mean Africa as a whole, percentage-wise. There are many countries in Africa that don't have any issues with their neighbors. So why would they need weapons from Russia and China? And if they supply you with those weapons, can you imagine what could go wrong? People might take those weapons and start attacking each other, like what is happening in Sudan. The bigger question we all must ask ourselves is whether we want to be our own man or we want to keep on depending on other nations. We really need to re-examine ourselves and ask ourselves this fundamental question: if we want to have equal rights on the international scene, we want to be treated as equals on the international scene, we want to have a seat on the decision-making table, or we want to be used as ping-pong ball between superpowers. We must ask ourselves that question. Because I think all this back and forth argument of who is better than who, China, Russia, America, India, is not really helping any single one of us. We need to stop being in the middle of these superpowers. We need to realize that we have to find our own way. Africa needs to unite. Africa needs to do things by themselves. The AU needs to step up. Things need to be done in the proper way.